while we're talking about medical treatment, like go into what we were talking about. We've also talked about this a million times, and about the pre-existing medical condition.
Yes.
Issue.
In fact, yeah, you're right. We've talked about it. We've actually even had a podcast about it.
Yeah.
But pre-existing condition raises its head a lot as well. Partly because some of the pre-existing conditions generally almost anybody has. I mean,
degenerative disc disease. People don't realize. I mean, it's
if you're over,
isn't it like 40%?
Yeah, if you're over 30 years
55.
old, yeah. I mean, I think over 30 years old, you're probably going to have some level of degeneration in the discs in your back.
Yeah, and clients are always shocked when I point it out to them. You know, they're really going after the degenerative disc disease. They say, "Wait, what?" Because they're like slip disc, herniated disc. I'm like, no, it's just spinal narrowing. Basically, it's really common. But I mean, there's been more often than not, people are pretty surprised, and it's been in their medical records from years ago. Like point being, it's very common.
Yeah, and what the insurance companies will try to do, that adjuster's going to try to say, okay, well, you have degenerative disc disease, Charlie, and you were in this, relatively minor accident, and so we don't believe that your back pain now is from that. And what they try to do is they're going to
from the accident.
Yeah. They're going to try to say, well, your back pain's from that. It's not from this accident. Fortunately, what happens is, or what should happen is that at-fault driver and then the insurance company that they are insured by are liable for changes. So that's what we talk about in that podcast, but I can kind of tell you a little bit. So like if you have a baseline of your injury or your condition before the accident, and then it's elevated, it's either temporarily aggravated like a flare-up, or it is changed, worsened permanently, they're on the hook for those changes. And then another one we see too is that an insurance company will say, oh, well, what happened to you, Charlie, is, I'm just using your name.
Yeah.
What happened to you is unforeseeable or unreasonable. And the average person would not have gotten hurt in that way. But there's tons of reasons that someone may be more highly susceptible to, like I said, a degenerative disc disease.
Right.
If someone has a nearly herniated disc and they didn't know about it, or a pinched nerve or something, they didn't really know about it, or something so close, and then they get in a wreck, well, it may be a minor wreck, but it may have pushed, it may be the final straw.
Right,
so
the straw that broke the camel's back.
It may literally be the straw that breaks that disc's back.
Yeah.
And you may need to have a disc arthroscopy or an artificial disc.
Or decompression surgery, where there was already stenosis existing, and this made it so where the pain just became unbearable with the pinched nerve.
And so a lot of times they may say, well, you were hit at 20 miles an hour in a parking lot. There's no way. But that person was highly susceptible. And that's what we talk about in that podcast is the Eggshell plaintiff doctrine. The fact that, it doesn't matter how unforeseeable it is. If it's something if you have some wild condition that you don't even know about,
right.
You may have some genetic disorder that you literally have never known in your entire life, but it makes your bones more brittle.
Yeah.
You never knew. And you're walking around like Mr. Glass.
Yeah, I was just thinking Mr. Glass.
And you something happens to you and you suffer some catastrophic injury. You never know.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how unforeseeable it is or how rare it is. That's usually flipped against, by insurance adjusters a lot of times. And I think Joel and I talked about that in that podcast too. And I keep referring to that. Y'all can go watch it if you'd like. But what happened is a lot of times these insurance adjusters will kind of misconstrue the Eggshell plaintiff. Even if we have a sophisticated claimant who has heard of it or knows about it, that adjuster is usually going to try to use it. And I don't know if they misinterpret it on purpose or what, but they'll often try to say that means that your higher susceptible condition is basically your own fault. Like, just because you're an eggshell does not mean that we're on the hook. So the pre-existing injuries thing is a huge problem. I think the biggest problem is it may scare people off from going and getting the treatment they need because in those initial consultations, or if they've sent their medical records to an adjuster and they're saying, I'm still having problems, and that adjuster's saying, well, you have back problems before, they may be scared off.
Right, because they don't want to get more treatment if they're concerned that it's not going to be covered. Exactly. They're thinking it's going to be sunk costs. They're going to be even more in the hole than they already are.
Exactly. And, it's critical in those types of cases to get an attorney just because, like I was telling you too, it may be a temporary worsening, it may be a permanent worsening. So that's a huge difference. If someone has an injury that they had before and it's flared up temporarily, maybe they have some treatment, physical therapy, it's back to normal or back to what it was before, maybe not back to normal.
Right.
But the problem is when people have an injury and it's accelerated so fast, especially any kind of joint injury. I've had clients before who've had, say, knee problems before. They maybe already had arthritis in their knee, and they suffer a slip and fall accident. I know we're talking about car insurance here, but very similar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a slip and fall accident on that knee, well, they may recover, but then their arthritis may be accelerated. And so that's a lifetime change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so all of that stuff is very critical. And anytime you have an adjuster who's mentioning, you know, pre-existing conditions and pre-existing injuries, you definitely need to see a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, moral of the story here is just, I mean, you know, like there's nothing to lose as far as getting a consultation. Like you said, if, you know, plaintiffs' firms, personal injury firms, you know, they ought to give free consultations. We do all the time, and it's just worth it. I mean, you don't know what the motives are for insurance companies. Like you said, they're a business. The whole business being collect premiums, don't make payouts. You know, that's the name of the game. It's, you know, it is what it is. So, you know, these are some pitfalls that, I mean, like clockwork. Even when an attorney is representing you, they still, I mean, all the way up to in front of a jury, you know, they're going to go for these arguments. So without an attorney, you know, if you don't know what the counter arguments are and you don't know how to combat these arguments, like it's pretty harrowing and it's overwhelming. And, you know, you think that these are, you know, experts that have experience. They're not pulling this out of nowhere, and they're kind of not, but, you know, it needs to be combated, whether it's through an attorney or with knowledge that an attorney gives you if you want to undertake it yourself.